Good evening. My name is Carolyn Klaube, and I'm the Sourland Conservancy Stewardship Director. I'd like to provide you with a really quick overview of the critical work we're doing as an organization and the surprising ripple effect it's causing in the region. So this is a map of the Sourlands, and it illustrates the unique characteristics of the mountain, the forest, the wetlands, and that diabase ridge. The mountain brings together 7 municipalities and 3 counties into one big community. The Sourland region is a mosaic of habitats, land use, and ownership, straddling 7 municipalities: Hillsborough, Montgomery, Hopewell Borough, Hopewell Township, West Amwell, Lambertville, and East Amwell, and expands across 3 counties: Hunterdon County, Somerset County, and Mercer County. Private residences, businesses, land trusts, municipalities, nonprofits in the state of New Jersey all own or manage land in this region. In 1986, a group of Sourland residents from Hillsborough, Hopewell, and East Amwell gathered around Bob Garrett's kitchen table to share their concerns about the growing threat of the unsustainable development in this region. From this meeting, the Sourland Regional Citizens Planning Council was born. This council eventually became the Sourland Conservancy, and this is the founder, Bob Garrett. Since then, our staff and volunteers have been working with our partners to educate everyone about the importance of the region and show them how to care for it for over 35 years. So what's so special about the Sourlands? Well, we provide clean water, air, there's soil for all these plants to grow, carbon sequestration, habitat, there's a lot of history in this region, agriculture, and recreation. We all know that trees make oxygen and filter air, and that's important for all of us. But did you know trees filter water as well? Trees filter pollutants and reduce stormwater runoff. Water that begins its journey here at the top of the mountain makes its way all the way down to Philadelphia and Staten Island. Migratory fish and even eels swim upstream to spawn. If you've ever heard of Shad Fest, you know that clean water is something really to be celebrated. My son found an eel in Rockbrook and Skillman, and that eel was born in the Sargasso Sea near the Bermuda Triangle and swam all the way upstream into the Sourlands, and one day will return back to the Sargasso Sea to spawn. Usually when people think about endangered species, they think of it somewhere else. They don't think about endangered species at their home. They think of, the white rhino or something, but really endangered species can occur anywhere, and we have them here in the Sourlands, and quite a significant number of them. And unfortunately, the forest faces many threats, and we need to work together to protect it for future generations. And some of the biggest threats are overdevelopment, overpopulation of white-tailed deer, pollution, invasive species, climate change. It's really a huge threat. So in the next few years, over 1 million trees will die in the Sourlands due to the emerald ash borer. The emerald ash borer is a non-native invasive insect that kills ash tree. And that's about 20% of all the trees in the Sourlands are ash trees. So if you look at this map, on the right-hand side, you see the total carbon. You see that dark area right in the middle, and that's the Sourlands. And you look at the center map, and you can see that blue area, and that's the concentration of ash trees. And so the Sourlands has the highest concentration of ash trees of anywhere in the state. We're also this huge carbon sink, but when all those ash trees die, it's going to have a huge impact. And this picture right here shows a bunch of dead ash trees here in Montgomery. So who's going to be impacted by the death of all these ash trees? Plants, insects, birds, fish, reptiles, amphibians, you and me. Everybody is going to be impacted by the death of these ash trees. So let's talk about it. What's going on? So losing our forest is going to affect our water cycle. Usually when people think of the water cycle, they think of the large water cycle with evaporation coming off large bodies of water, but that's not the only way that water gets into the atmosphere. The small water cycle is driven by autotrophic, which is plant respiration, with plants bringing water up from the soil. It's moved through the plant and it's released the leaves from the stomata during photosynthesis. The small water cycle is actually more important to local precipitation patterns than the large water cycle. That's to say that up to 2/3 of precipitation on land actually comes from the small water cycle. So it's critically important that we need to focus on our forest health, not only to stabilize our small water cycle, but also to slow the throughfall. And that's the rain that's coming from the sky and down to the ground. We want to slow that down to allow the water to be able to drain into the soil. Because if the water is not having the time to be able to drain in, it's just going to run off the top of the soil and it's going to go onto impervious surfaces that it can't drain either. So like roads, parking lots, anywhere that water cannot drain down. So we need to slow the water to allow it to drain. And we need to provide more areas for water to be able to drain down to reduce that runoff and reduce our flooding. And this is what happens when we flood. And in 2021, we had 2 100-year storms within about 2 months. And this is going to keep happening again and again. And there are interventions that we can take that will help mitigate these flooding events on both global scales and on local scales. So as I showed earlier, the Sourland forest was a carbon sink in New Jersey. However, with such a large percentage of trees being lost to the emerald ash borer and lack of natural regeneration because there's too many deer and so they're eating all the young trees and invasive plant species, we're losing that powerhouse of being a carbon sink. And another thing that's really important is how the dead trees are broken down can affect how much carbon dioxide is released, which brings me to earthworms. So although earthworms are beneficial for growing food, research shows that they're actually harmful to our forests and potentially change the soil chemistry and contribute to climate change. So earthworms are not native to most of North America. Until about 10,000 years ago, a vast ice sheet covered the northern part of North America, and that kind of extirpated all of the earthworms that were there. And so when earthworms are reintroduced by European settlers, they are not the same types of earthworms that we had before. And they change the soil in really significant ways. So they eat faster than our native soil microbiota and other organisms that live in the soil. They can change the pH, they change the texture, they change the density, how the nutrients are released, and what nutrients are released in the soil, which can affect all of the plants, all the other organisms in there. And even though in garden soils, they aerate the soil, in forest soils, they actually compact it. So it's a really big problem. Another important thing with the forest is that it can have cooling effects. So there's been extensive research on deforestation of tropical forests affecting global warming. And there's emerging research showing that temperate forests, like where we are here, that they have local impacts on climate change, and they kind of mitigate global warming. And this is really important because local climate change can affect the insect emergence in the spring. So when insects are waking up, it affects root zone temperatures, which that can affect bloom time in plants. And so if the pollinators, when they're waking up and the bloom time of the plants are no longer aligned up, that means that there's not the food resource for our pollinators. And it means that our plants are not going to get pollinated, so they won't produce any seeds. And then it's going to start having this effect on our food chain, because we start down with the bottom of the food chain with our autotrophs, our plants, and then it has this ripple effect moving forward. And it's so important to understand that we are part of the food web too. Humans rely on the smooth running ecosystem. Whether you buy your food at the grocery store or you grow it in the backyard, we are part of this as well. And anything that's happening in the food chain is going to affect us. And so when we're thinking about food chains and this disruption, we also really need to think about the types of food resources that are being provided. So 90% of herbivorous insects can only eat a few plant lineages. So it's really important that our native plants are there and they're blooming at the right time, they're leafing out at the right time, because they provide these food resources throughout our trophic levels. And for support pollinators and other really important insects. So again, when we think pollinators, so many people think of honeybees, but honeybees are European, they're not native to this region. And even a lot of our crop plants are not even pollinated by bees. So almost 40% of crop pollinators are non-bee species. And this bee species that are pollinating are not necessarily honeybees, they're probably our native bees. Another way that forests support pollinators are that the trees are huge resources for many different species. So oaks in particular host over 456 species of Lepidoptera. So Lepidoptera are caterpillars, so butterflies and moths. Black cherries are again a native tree, excellent host for Lepidoptera, and they produce food that over 84 species of birds will eat. And hackberry is another one. And these are our forest trees. And, you know, without that, their host plants, these pollinators cannot survive. And you cannot just sub one plant for another plant. So even though these are both viburnum species, the one on the left is our native American cranberry bush, Viburnum trilobum. And the other one is linden viburnum. These are not the same plant, even though they might look similar, they don't host the same species. And like I said before, insects, herbivorous insects can only feed on certain species. And so this is not the same transition or the same transaction between the two species. They do not provide the same resources to our pollinators. And same thing with the fruit. The berries are not the same. They don't have the same nutritional content between the two of them. And so it is really, really important that we protect our native species and plant them and promote them. So what's the solution? You and me. The good news is that there's so many things that we can do to help. Public plantings are a lot of fun. This picture is of Lori Cleveland, our executive director, and she is planting trees over at Howell Farm in Hopewell. We did this planting with Mercer County Park Commission. And we have to act like the Justice League, because in each superhero has its own powers, right? They can do different things, but this problem is so big that not one organization or one superhero or one county or municipality, not one can do it by itself, but we have to work together. And here we are working together. This is the same planting. And so this is Sourland Conservancy with Fairfax Hutter, and she was a watershed ambassador. There's Alex and Jillian, they worked for Mercer County Park Commission, and Debbie Kratzer with NJDEP. And we worked as a team collaborating on this reforestation project. And so the Sourland Conservancy kind of jumped into stewardship and started to take an active role in 2016. And we worked with Mercer County Park Commission and Phobos to do a woodcock habitat restoration project in Hopewell Borough Park. And so they cleared invasives and they planted in 500 trees and shrubs with the help of volunteers. And today, the Sourland Conservancy has planted over 15,000 trees and shrubs in partnership with nonprofit and municipalities and land trusts throughout the region. Our partners include New Jersey Conservation Foundation, DNR Greenway Land Trust, Friends of Hopewell Valley Open Space, the Watershed Institute, Montgomery Township, Hillsborough Township, Somerset County Park Commission, and Mercer County Park Commission. In 2022, we'll be working with East Amwell and Lambertville and many other organizations that we've already started talks with. So here's our new here's the new NJDEP program that we're using as a blueprint for our work. You can see how wildlife can roam throughout the state to keep their population healthy. And private land homeowners can strengthen these corridors. In fact, 80% of New Jersey land is privately owned, and the success of this effort hinges on homeowners. And here we are. You can see us, the little pink circle. The Sourlands is critical to connect North and South Jersey wildlife populations. The NJDEP and other organizations are looking very closely at the Sourland connectivity and really giving us a thumbs up for the work that we're doing. And they're hoping that other organizations will learn from what we've been doing and replicate our partnership model. And as we continue to work with our partners, volunteers, and interns, we learn more about how to effectively restore the Sourland forest through planting and natural regeneration, which is a really good start. So in 2022, we hope to encourage more partners and residents to help join us in the fight to save the Sourlands. And the truth is, we can choose right now. We can all work together to preserve the special place, or we can let it go. And personally, I'm not letting it go. So why do we need interns? Well, when a flood washed away tree tubes in our Van Zant planting site, our interns quickly mobilized to lead volunteers to replace the tree tubes before deer were able to get to those exposed trees. They're also really great at being able to get into sensitive species habitat areas where we don't want to have big groups of volunteers, or carry these trays of trees and tree tubes all the way out deep into the woods and be able to work and restore areas that we couldn't, again, have volunteers out there. So in preparation for 2022, we're going to be building more partnerships with nonprofits, municipalities, counties, and other government agencies. We're going to help private landowners replace lost ash and improve their habitat. And we're working with Raritan Valley Community College to collect information on the plantings that we're doing and implement the most effective practices. So what will you do in 2022 to help save the Sourlands? There's so many options and ways for you to get involved. So make sure that you do your part. And saving the Sourlands is a community effort. Share your talents, learn new skills, meet really great people, and get out and, get out hiking and participate. So how can you help personally? Be a lazy gardener, don't use pesticides, herbicides, contact local representatives, and spread the word and volunteer wherever you can. Because when we work together, we can do a lot more, and together we can save the Sourlands. So thank you for your time. And if you have questions, please email me and let me know. Thank you.